No, I was unceremoniously dropped Sunday from the speaking order.
Good morning to the members of the media and our viewers on the social media platforms. Today, we would like to welcome you to the Office of the Leader of Opposition press conference for May 17, 2022. I will introduce my panel from my right, none other than Senior Counsel Mr. Roysdale Ford, Member of Parliament. To his right, we have the leader of the People's National Congress Reform and the opposition leader, Mr. Aubrey Norton, Member of Parliament. And to his right, the General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform and Member of Parliament, Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmond. And to her right, the Vice Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform and Member of Parliament, Mr. Viceroy Jordan. Welcome to our press conference. Today's press statement will be read in 3 parts, after which we will open the floor for questions, and as is customary, we will ask that you state your name and your media entity. I will start with Senior Counsel Roysdale Ford.
Good morning, members of the media. The press statement. Consultations must satisfy legal requirements. The opposition insists and demands that it expects the consultation must be in strict compliance with the letter and spirit of the Constitution. Article 232 of the Constitution provides on consultation or meaningful consultation that it was incumbent on the person or entity responsible for seeking consultation to A, identify the persons or entities to be consulted and specify to them in writing the subject of the consultation and an intended date for the decision on the subject of consultation. The Constitution contemplates by its definition of consultation and meaningful consultation that there will be full, effective, and genuine consultation as opposed to formal and unproductive engagements. Article 232b of the Constitution also requires that adequate time and information be given for the party being consulted to respond. The party provided the information is also required to provide all the material and the grounds on which specific recommendations were made. Adequate time to respond on the subject matter of the consultation is essential as the party being consulted be allowed time to take such steps as may be appropriate and requisite in order to be prepared to tender effective and meaningful advice and to ensure meaningful consultation. The Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, MP, received a letter dated the 29th day of April 2022 under the hand of Ms. Gail Teixeira, Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, inviting him to a meeting with the President to consult on several constitutional appointments on Friday the 13th day of May 2022 at the Office of the President. The Leader of the Opposition responded to the aforementioned letter by a letter dated the 9th day of May 2022, in which he indicated that he stood ready to fulfill the constitutional responsibilities of the office of Leader of the Opposition. In the said letter, the Leader of the Opposition pointed out that the letter of the 29th day of April 2022 was vague and did not provide any information relating to the constitutional appointments which would be addressed. A letter dated the 11th day of May 2022 was received again under the hand of Ms. Gail Teixeira, in which for the first time the specific constitutional and statutory commissions in respect of which the proposed consultations were to be held were identified. The letter dated the 11th day of May 2022 merely listed the Integrity Commission, Judicial Service Commission, Police Service Commission, and the persons proposed by the President to be appointed to the Teaching Service Commission. The Leader of the Opposition, in a letter dated the 12th day of May 2022, whilst restating his commitment to discharge his constitutional obligations, and particularly to engage in consultations as required by law, felt compelled to underscore that the letter dated 11th day of May 2022 from Ms. Gail Teixeira was bereft of any material upon which he would form an opinion on the subjects of the proposed consultation. The Leader of the Opposition pointed out that the communication received from Ms. Gail Teixeira in respect of the proposed consultation were all vague, woefully inadequate, and insufficient to significantly advance the consultative process envisaged and provided for in the relevant constitutional and statutory provisions. Further, the Leader of the Opposition concluded that the communication from Ms. Gail Teixeira did not contribute to him being afforded a reasonable opportunity to effectively participate in the proposed consultation process. On the 12th of May 2022, the President agreed to provide further information, that is to say, the curriculum vitae of the persons being recommended by the President to be appointed to the Commission. To date, the material and grounds upon which the recommendations of persons for appointment to the constitutional and statutory commissions remain with the President. Hence, the consultation process has not been in accordance with the requirements of meaningful consultation. Thank you.
We will now have the other part of the statement read by Member of Parliament, Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmond.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haynes. Good day, good afternoon to all our viewers. This part of the statement that I will be reading on behalf of the opposition is titled, Opposition Calls for Comprehensive Electoral Reform Within a Genuine National Consultative Process. The PPP must now face the reality that the nation has rejected both its amendments to ROPA and its so-called public consultations on electoral reform. This rejection is informed by the fact that the PPPC's approach is piecemeal, it is deceitful, and it is quite self-serving. As such, the PPP totally fails to address key systemic and structural flaws and weaknesses in our electoral system. It totally avoids any consideration of major constitutional, statutory, administrative, operational, and technological reforms. In fact, the PPPC's approach seems more likely to make free and fair and uncontested elections in Guyana more elusive. So for the sake of the country, we must, and we have to do better. We need all stakeholders to participate and be satisfied that we have improved the system and we have prepared the basis for free and fair elections. For the opposition, local, regional, and national elections must meet three objectives. The first being only eligible persons must be registered. Secondly, results must accurately reflect the will of those who have voted. And thirdly, every step of the election process, that is the registration, production of voters' lists, voting and counting, and tabulation and the declaration of results, it must win the trust. It must win the trust and the confidence of the public, participating parties, and other relevant stakeholders. Meeting these three objectives require that Guyana embark on urgent and comprehensive electoral reform. Tinkering will not work. It simply will not work. Disjointed changes, it will not work. Bad faith will not work. And this is our position. Additionally, the PNCR maintains that comprehensive electoral reform must rest on four pillars. The first being a thorough review by GCOM of its performance in managing recent elections. The plethora of faults and irregularities intended and unintended in the 2020 elections alone must not be brushed under the carpet to resurface again. They must be swept out for good. To achieve this, a thorough and honest review must be conducted as necessary, and we are advocating that this is the first step. Here we agree with GCOM Commissioner Vincent Alexander that GCOM itself must not conduct such a review, but should be the one to commission it. Secondly, national consultations involving the public, civil society, and the parliamentary political parties. These must be modeled after the 1999-2000 Constitution Reform Commission process. In particular, key elements must include a multi-stakeholder expert committee, a consensus chairperson, a public call for oral and written submissions, and several national conversations, and these must all be open forums. Thirdly, the in-depth involvement of experts on electoral laws, electoral systems, elections technologies, and election management. We anticipate no difficulty in recruiting such expertise, given the international support for electoral reform in Guyana. Fourthly, holistic constitutional and legislative amendments or enactments. The opposition anticipates that electoral reform will require both constitutional and statutory requirements to the statutory amendments. We stand ready to lend parliamentary support to all agreed to changes, and this is something that I feel very passionately about, so I'm going to restate this statement. We stand ready to lend parliamentary support to all agreed to changes. Time is of the essence in initiating and completing these reforms to prevent extended postponement of local government elections. Once the PPP government demonstrates good faith, the financial, human, and other resources can easily be mobilized. Once all parties, once all of us, every single one of us, we decide to put Guyana first, delays will be minimized because Guyana deserves no less. So convinced is the APNU AAFC that we intend to formally raise with President Ali that the country needs to urgently undertake comprehensive electoral reform within a genuine national consultation process. My party, the PNCR, and by extension the coalition, will not support the autocratic imposition of changes to our electoral system. Accordingly, we reject the present PPP-led so-called national consultation on ROPA.
Thank you. And now we'll have the final part of the statement being read by Mr. Vince Roy Jordan, Member of Parliament.
Members of the media, listening and viewing audience, good afternoon. GWI's witch hunt of staff perceived to be aligned to the APNU AFC. It is unbelievable to even imagine that the head of a government agency had the nerve to sit at the press conference and boastfully speak of the dismissal of over 300 staff members. The CEO of GWI declared that the dismissals will save the company some Guyana $240 million. This is hogwash. Guyanese are well aware that under the coalition government, with the very 300 plus staff members, water service provided had drastically increased. The residents received quality level of service, which included 24 hours water service, and many communities received potable water for the first time. Hence, GWI's actions could only be seen as acts of victimization, discrimination, and incompetence. The GWI management in May and June 2021 went after staff perceived to be aligned to the APNU AFC coalition and fired 76 staff workers after making their positions redundant so as to achieve their witch hunting mandate. This is evident in the case of Regions 5 and 10, where the same positions that were made redundant and are still operational and fully staffed in Region 3, 6, and Georgetown. This is evident that it is a witch hunt. How can you say their positions are redundant and re-employ persons in the same positions? Clearly, it is vindictiveness, political and ethnic discrimination. The Guyana Water Inc.'s unfair and racially motivated dismissals continued with the forcing of senior technical and managerial staff to either resign or to be demoted. This is a clear case with the recent dismissal of the company's IT director, the reassignment and demotion of the program planning, design and implementation director, and the head of water quality, among others who were forced to resign. The parliamentary opposition calls on Guyana Water Inc. to immediately disclose the list of all those who were fired, retired, resigned, and hired from August 2020 to present. The question must be asked, therefore, how many were really fired and how many resigned out of the 322 staff reduction? Or is it that the company had an 18.6% retirement age staff complement, which all conveniently retired in just over a year's period? The very CEO who is now touting financial stability because he sacked at a stroke of a pen hundreds of public servants has hired since taking office a number of staff, including former embattled finance director and other management staff, earning salaries in the range of $420,000 to $580,000 and more, along with duty allowances and commuted vehicle allowances, all which are tax-free. Clearly, it was not an oversized staff. It is victimization, political and ethnic discrimination. However, while Sheikh Bashk and Elvis Jordan justify the need for the dismissal of the 157 employees in the year 2021, they defended GWI's decision to rehire the financial director, Jagopal Ram, who was fired in 2018 over financial irregularities. The parliamentary opposition rubbishes the CEO's boast of financial stability, since under his management, the company lost $30 million from a GWI bank account by fraud perpetrated at a commercial bank and funds transferred to a New York bank account and address in March 2021. The parliamentary opposition calls on GWI and SOCU to make the findings of that investigation public. We demand that the CEO disclose if the $240 million financial stability that he boasted about includes the $30 million lost through fraud. Thank you.
Thank you, Member of Parliament. At this time, we will open up the floor for questions, and it will be done by the raise of hands. You will state your name and your media entity. I see the hand of News Talk Radio Guyana. One moment, please.
Could you say why, whether the opposition, either the PNC or the Combined Coalition, has formally registered its concerns about the attempts to reform the Guyana's electoral laws of the government? And when was this done? Have you formally done so?
We have indicated that what we will do is present a formal position on this issue We have listened to civil society. We have had internally our preparation of a document that will be discussed when we engage GCOM and the wider society. We did say in the press statement that we are looking towards a national consultation, and all our positions will be made pellucidly clear as is practically possible.
Why has it taken 6 months for you to do so, given the fact that the government has made public the proposed amendments in November, I think, of last year?
Well, it hasn't taken 6 months. We have always formulated our position, but we understand politics in Guyana. If we had run out and be in the forefront of opposing what the PPP was doing, it would have been seen as political. What we have allowed, and we did comment on, for instance, when the Electoral Reform Group gave their position, we did say it was welcome, etc. What we have allowed is for civil society and others to comment. We have supported, and we believe that at the right time we will engage and ensure we achieve the objectives we set out. I believe, unlike the People's Progressive Party, there's a place for civil society, and if a political space can be created for civil society to act, then one stands a better chance of finding consensus and moving forward. And it is in that context we operated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a raise of hand, Mr. Adam Harris?
It is.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Good morning, all. For the coverage, yes. You spoke about the ensuring that only eligible people are registered. Sometime back we talked about the government moving to have some Venezuelans registered and all of that. How are you monitoring the registration process to ensure that only eligible people are registered?
All right, thank you for that question, Mr. Harris. As you know, we have identified a chief scrutineer. That person has several deputy scrutineers who work with her. They sort of form a subset, and they're all across the region, and they are present at every district office. Where this sort of business is being done, we are in receipt daily of reports of what is happening. Last Sunday, some of these, the contents of these reports were raised at our meeting, and we are in the process of formulating how we are going to move forward. As you're aware, we've had an initial meeting with GCOM, and at that meeting, we did indicate that we are going to have ongoing talks with GCOM. And so some of the findings that have been unearthed by our chief scrutineer and the deputy chief scrutineers and other irregularities that have been unearthed will be raised with GCOM at that meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, we talk about the irregularities on Earth. Do you care to tell us what are some of these irregularities, please?
What I'll commit to say, Mr. Harris, is that we have, in some cases, they are flagrant breaches, violation of the statutory requirements. We have sometimes the Form F being abused. And there's so many more cases. I'm not sure if leadership at this time would want to highlight the specifics of these discrepancies, but we are in possession of a very detailed report. Like I've just mentioned to you, only last Sunday we had a very exhaustive CUC meeting, and all of these matters were addressed.
Just to say that we think the government, by its approach to birth certificates, would have created a situation where they can virtually give anybody a birth certificate, and that is under scrutiny. We think that the government is preparing the conditions to rig the next election. I think they believe that they can win it with a clean voters list and a clean process. And so we are taking action on those matters as the information comes to us. We are in possession of information that on one case on the East Coast, and we had people check it out, where they were issuing birth certificates to Venezuelans. At the same time, they are depriving Nigerians, Africans generally, and Haitians who are eligible from registering.
Thank you. I see the hand again of News Talk Radio Guyana.
Yes, Mr. Norton, the General Secretary of your party, do you have some actual numbers of the foreigners who are not born in Guyana or who do not, or whose parents are not Guyanese or they're not married to Guyanese? Do you have any actual numbers of those persons who have sought to register or have actually been able to obtain Guyanese documents?
I would not say we have actual numbers, because in these things you never know. And even if we had actual numbers, I don't know to what advantage it would be for us to disclose it at this stage.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Adam Harris?
Yes, this is for Mr. Vince Roy Jordan, sir. Now, in your opening presentation, you spoke about an individual who actually defrauded GWI of $30 million, and you said that this money was withdrawn from a local bank and deposited in a foreign bank. Why? But first of all, and perhaps Mr. Ford can help me here, can there be private criminal prosecution in this area? That's one. And secondly, when were you aware of this? Because I want to ask you, why wasn't this person charged?
All right. Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Harris. Just for clarity, it was not from a local bank account that I said, but I said from a GWI account. Yes. And I mentioned also that this occurred in March of 2021. And after the company realized that this happened, they launched an investigation where SOCO was invited. And to date, they have not produced or presented rather to the public, or most of the management of the company have not stated what are the findings and what are the measures taken since the investigation. And so the investigation, having been called, has not yet ended in our view, because they have not brought any finality to the public as to what really transpired.
Could I also add, Adam, you're making the assumption that this is a democratic society in which the police operates independently and could go ahead and charge anyone found in breach of the law. You should know from your years of experience that the People's Progressive Party protect their criminals. They ensure that the police doesn't charge them. And so a lot of the persons in the PPP who are involved in fraud and illegalities are protected by the government by ensuring that the police doesn't exercise its independence and operate as an institution within a democratic society that has a responsibility for law enforcement. That's our reality.
Thank you. I see the hand of Wendell Baddery.
Good morning, thank you, and good morning all. Mr. Norton, Mr. Ford, could you see whether those CVs have been received and whether the date for the next meeting between the leader of the opposition, Mr. Norton, and the president has been confirmed just yet?
Yeah, some CVs were received, no date has been confirmed, and if you follow the press statement, you will be able to decipher if everything is happening within the law or not.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Gordon, if you could back out a bit on the last question I asked concerning the release of figures, to what extent do you believe, though, that if you provide solid data, you'll be more convincing to the public about your position?
Well, it's not only convincing to the public. A lot of times it's the public that is telling us what is happening, and so I think the public is already convinced.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Harris.
Yes. Mr. Ford, please, sir. What is the status of the elections petition? We are hearing nothing. We don't know what's going on. Have your lawyers been approaching the court in the absence of this silence?
Thank you, Adam, for the question. Much is happening in relation to the elections petitions. Currently, in relation to the appeal that is being filed by the Attorney General and Barajagio, that is currently being processed in the CCJ. And yesterday or the day before, I received communication from the registrar of the CCJ that that matter is fixed for case management conference on the 31st of May of this month. In relation to the second election petition, which is currently for hearing before the Court of Appeal, that matter is still to be heard and a date set for hearing. The challenge that is being experienced at this stage is that after a considerable period of time, we are not yet in possession of the Chief Justice's judgment. I've written numerous letters to the Court of Appeal. I've visited the chambers of the Chief Justice. Up to yesterday, I happened to have a conversation with the legal registrar of the Court of Appeal, in which she informed me that her last communication with the office of the CJ was to the effect that that judgment is still not prepared. And we're still awaiting that, that judgment in order to process and advance the hearing expeditiously of that appeal that is before the Court of Appeal.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Ivor Wharton.
I'm trying to get a reaction from the opposition on the measures that government outlined yesterday to bring relief to Guyanese.
Well, first of all, I think you're talking about one, the first to help riverine communities. We believe it's a direct response to our visit to the Berbice River, in which we identify a number of things that are happening, not only in the Berbice River, in a lot of riverine communities. For instance, for months, a lot of the people in the riverine communities have not been receiving their pension. We brought that to the public's attention. For instance, when they do come, they go to the communities and they sit in the boat rather than coming out and meet pensioners. And so pensioners have difficulties getting their pension because a lot of the pension officers sit in a boat, and at certain ages, people can't get to the boat to get their pension. Additionally, pensioners complain that because they come when they like, how they like, they are not readily prepared, because sometimes, if you know how the riverine area operates, they go at one point, and others have got to go by boat to come to that particular point. And so a lot of times they are not aware, and when they come, some pensioners who have been waiting as long as 6 months don't get paid. We underscore the fact that one health worker hasn't been paid for more than a year, and the incompetence of the Ministry of Health is manifest. So we think what has happened is that in this case, they are indicating that they will deliver resources. Look, we have no problem with the government giving resources to people in riverine areas. But that alone will not solve the problem. For instance, in the Berbice River, the issue here is for them to get their produce to the farm. While we were in government, we began the Millie's hideout to Kimbia Road, which would allow people in the Berbice River to bring their produce out. The government stopped that road. And so, even if you give some assistance, and we believe the assistance should be given, and it should be taken because it reduces the amount for their corruption, even though at the same time it increases opportunity for corruption because they don't prepare in a proper way a register and have a structured way of people getting the money and knowing who are entitled gets it. So there are a lot of problems there, but for us they are not addressing the riverine communities in a comprehensive way. That is what is needed. I think I saw that they're again talking about some cash grants and tax relief. I think they said on sheetrock, etc. Look, you only have to look at what is happening in practice. Every time they talk about removal of duty and removal of taxes, the price of nothing goes down. In fact, they continue to rise. So again, you can see what they will do here. They will take some of their supporters, ensure they can access resources, benefit, but a small man who at the end will have to buy will not experience a reduction in price, and so it will not contribute to the improvement of the quality of life of people. And that is what people need. Unfortunately for this government, cash grants, tax relief, etc., are avenues for corruption. So our response is essentially, look, our people need relief. Our people must get relief, should get relief. But the government's approach is not one aimed at giving relief that will improve the quality of the life of the people. It is one-off cash grants that create conditions that are fertile for corruption rather than solving the problems of the people.
Thank you.
If I can again,
Go ahead.
32,000 people will benefit from this 800 million cash grant. In the past, when cash grants were distributed, you had persons in need who did not benefit. Are you concerned that this is going to happen again?
Not only are we concerned, we have expressed the concern. The government operates in a way that create conditions propitious to corruption. First of all, there is no data provided on how many households we have. Then secondly, since we recall from practice that they on the one hand say households, but when they actually proceed to implement, they then start to ask people for transport, etc., and evidence that they own the property in areas where the opposition control. We have no doubt that they will go down the same path of marginalizing and discriminating against people they perceive not to be supportive of them. And then, since there are no mechanisms for accountability, those resources will end up in the hands of PPP people because they don't use public servants that are neutral and paid to do their job. They use PPP activists. So cash grants have got to be seen as another means of the PPP giving a trickle to the people, but putting considerable money in the hands of PPP activists and cronies.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see the hand of Mr. Adam Harris.
Yes, a quick one. Comrade Leader, after your meeting with President Ali, I couldn't help but overhearing some questions being thrown at you. One had to do with Mr. Jagdio's obsession with statement the poll, and somebody asked about winning statement the poll. The operator don't believe it's anything, but that's another point. But why this obsession with statement the poll when these have been overtaken by statement of account and all that? And Mr. Ford can also help in this area.
When you're dealing with Barajak, you have to know you're dealing with a pathological liar. He had all his people there the night of that European reception. And if he has a statement in which Aubrey Norton, leader of the opposition, said, I have winning statement to polls, he must produce it. But he can't. The man specializes in lying. I have been given an indication of the many times that he lied. The building of Amelia's Ward, among others. Now, there is a trend that has developed. They are not engaging journalists. What they are doing is placing their cronies who are bloggers on Facebook to ask stupid questions. Look, like I said at the time when Barajak was engaging me, if you want the truth of the elections to come out, let the court deal with petition 99 where all the evidence is, and if you truly want to engage, like I said, if he wants to speak about the recount process, I'm prepared to debate him on it. But barring that, the petition is filed, they are putting stumbling blocks in the way of the petition. If you are sure you didn't rig, if you are sure you were there by valid votes, then let petition 99 go through and solve the problem. That is the reality. But when you're dealing with somebody of Barajak Deo's ilk, remember, this is a failed leader. This is a man that wasted millions of dollars on Skeldon. This is a man that wasted millions of dollars on fiber optic cable. This is a man that wastes millions of dollars on projects. This is a man who, while he was president, the EU gave money to put in to modernizing and realigning the sugar industries, and workers should have gotten that money. That money was squandered as well. So when you have a failed leader, when you have a man who was proven to be incompetent, a man who under his watch, countless international organizations concluded that there are high levels of corruption, what such a person has to do is find ways and means of distracting from their incompetence, etc. And I think this is what he does, but the world knows full well that he's incompetent, he's a failure, and he has not much to offer except access to oil funds through corrupt means.
Thank you very much. Any other questions as we begin to wrap up?
Quick, yes, one, quick one, and this is for Mr. Norton. Mr. Norton, you were approached by a resident of La Parfaite Harmony about the condition of the road leading to the private school. And you have, according to the report, but you have promised to make a visit. Is that report accurate?
The report is accurate if it says that yesterday pictures were sent to me of the road, and I acknowledge receipt of it, and I did indicate that I will go. Yesterday I received it. I think this morning I saw something else. There's Parliament today, but I did receive the report, and I intend to go to Parfaite Harmony. I have been responding to citizens' requests, and have been going all around the country. I ended up in Mukka because the people in Mukka were saying to us that the government is taking advantage of them. They're using the cronies to try to move them from key positions along the highway so that they can occupy it. I was invited to go to the Berbice River. I did. I'm invited to the quarantine tomorrow to deal with a number of issues, and I will be going. But please remember, for instance, visits to some communities have already been planned, and I'm putting it on my schedule, and I will be at Parfait Harmony.
Thank you. All right, I see no other hands raised here. So at this point, I do believe we will call this the end of today's press conference. I hope you do have a pleasant afternoon and do enjoy the rest of your day.